Good evening. I'm Shelley Bailey Shaw, Public Communications Officer for the Beaverton School District, and I want to welcome you to our community conversation about the drug fentanyl. We've called our educational campaign Fake and Fatal, One Pill Can Kill, and the sad reality is it has. Fentanyl poisonings have claimed the lives of students in the Beaverton district and districts around the country. We're here to do everything in our power to educate parents, guardians, and students about the dangers. Tonight, you'll hear from the Washington County Sheriff's Department and the Beaverton Police Department about the extent of the problem in the metro area and just how it is that teens are getting their hands on these pills. We'll be joined by Andy Cartmill from the Washington County Health and Human Services Department, who will explain why particularly fentanyl is so deadly. But first, we want to hear from Jennifer and Jon Epstein, parents in the Beaverton School District. This is their son Cal's story.
Cal had long-term plans. He had short-term plans. In no way did he desire to harm himself. We're certain of that.
He made a mistake. You know, it used to be kids made mistakes and learned from them. With fentanyl, if you make a mistake, you die. I'm Jennifer Epstein, and this is my husband, Jon. We have lived in Beaverton since 1996 and raised our kids in this area. Our kids went to Cedar Park Middle School as well as Sunset High School.
That's right. Happy birthday, Callie. Callie's eating his birthday breakfast. What do you have for breakfast today, Callie?
I don't know.
Cal, as a young kid, he lived large.
He's so cute.
Cal was a fun kid, very much an extrovert.
And how old are you? 32.
He liked to distinguish himself from others. He liked to have a brighter jacket or a different hat. He liked to stand out. He did t-ball, he did kick and chase soccer, he did karate and wrestling. He was a great wrestler with the Sunset Youth Wrestling Program. I don't think he ever lost a match. And then basketball, he did that. He was a really good swimmer. He became a lifeguard and then taught swim lessons. He was a great athlete, but that wasn't his love. He moved more towards the theater, performing, and then he actually really enjoyed the backstage, the lights and sound and crew and that sort of work.
He was a kid who brought people together.
Everybody, ready for pack 3?
He was a kid who always wanted to have people at our house.
Friendship was like one of Cal's superpowers.
He was always looking out for the person who might feel left out and reaching out to them and making sure that they were included. There was one girl who was going through a hard time, and at school every single day he sought her out every morning and gave her a hug because he knew she was going through a hard time. As
we came into senior year, we found some marijuana at the beginning of the year. In our house, we've had lots of talks about drugs, and there was a no tolerance policy, even in the face of normalized marijuana use, legalization, et cetera. And we had, we had a pretty serious, long, and what we thought was a good conversation with Cal about that. There were consequences. And we didn't see any more evidence of marijuana.
Later, senior year, we did discover that Cal was having more problems in terms of anxiety, and then we also discovered he had an eating disorder.
It was sort of around the combination of those things. We're like, wow, this feels a little larger than us and the pediatrician. And Cal wanted to work on these things, and we ended up finding some professional help, and we worked on those things from the early spring through the summer until he left for school. COVID made it harder. Not only were your meetings with your therapist about anxiety on a screen, but Cal was so social, and COVID really made that part of Cal's life harder. Ultimately, we, together with Cal and his therapist and professionals, decided going to college this feels like a good path. So we were really looking forward to Cal being home for Christmas. Came home on a Thursday in mid-December and was going to be home through mid-January. On Monday morning, we checked on Cal and we found him unresponsive, and we started CPR and we called the paramedics. It wasn't enough. The best we can tell, he sought out some Oxy from the street dealer on Snapchat, and I think it could be that he wanted to take some edge off of his anxiety from being home and gonna have some parent conversation. It's possible he just was looking to have fun, just a good time. Cal thought he was taking an OxyContin, and he ended up with fentanyl. So now you have cheap fentanyl. That's what these pills are. There is no real pill out there. It doesn't make sense for anyone to sell a real pharmaceutical pill when they can manufacture a fake one. Sell it for the same price and have it cost 100 times less. They're not OxyContin. They're not Percocet. They're not Xanax. They're none of these things. They are fake pills that have inconsistent amounts of deadly fentanyl, and you can't trust any of them. And so the game is completely changed, especially for kids who are going through an experimental phase. An experimental phase is now deadly. If you're experimenting with pills and powders and even vaping marijuana, which I've heard can also have fentanyl, just that one pill can kill.
Even if you didn't know Cal, everybody has a Cal in their life. If we had known, better understood it, we would have talked to our kids differently. And I think that there's still opportunity to save other people. For me, getting the message out, it will never bring Cal back. My son isn't coming back. It is something that in me that I need to do in order for me to move forward, in order for me to know that I've done everything I can to honor Cal, because he didn't deserve this.
On behalf of the Beaverton School District and everyone watching tonight, I want to thank Jen and Jon for their courage and their willingness to share their story, all for the purpose of saving other children's lives. Thank you for joining us tonight, you two, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Shelley, and hello to everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. When our youngest son, Callie, passed away, we were left reeling. Our hearts were shattered. We were confused. We had no idea what had just happened, and we felt alone. During those weeks, we were boosted by the love and support of our family and community. Looking back, everything is a blur, and I don't know how we got through those days. In the weeks following Cal's death, we connected with Ed and Mary Turnin from A Song for Charlie. They helped us to understand about today's fentanyl crisis and how young people in our communities are dying from fake pills. Once we got a better understanding of what was going on, I felt I needed to share. I just knew that most of the parents in our community had no idea the risks of the fake pills and the social media that exists today. And I knew that if one of Cal's friends had died of fake pills, he would have been devastated. He would have been mad, and he would have done everything in his power to reach out to others to warn them. to save them. Since Cal is not here to warn others, I decided I need to do it for him. Unfortunately, there's a stigma that comes with drug deaths. I was afraid no one would listen, but when I reached out to Beaverton School District, thankfully they heard me and were willing to give us a platform. Thank you all for tuning in tonight and listening to our family story, and for educating yourselves on this epidemic. I know we will be saving lives by sharing this information. We dedicate this presentation to our son, Callie. Next. I'd like to spend a few minutes sharing what we saw when Cal was in high school. What was going well, what caused stress, and our areas of concern. Cal was an outgoing kid who did a great job of balancing a lot. He did a good job at school, work, he had a leadership position in theater, and he had lots of friends that he kept in touch with. We did our best to provide a stable home environment where we tried to set reasonable limits. Cal had the normal stresses that I think most kids experience today, with 24/7 social media, prepping for college. They were all there. And then, of course, when COVID hit, that was especially hard on Cal. He was an extrovert, and quarantining at home was very hard on him. As we discussed in the video, we did come across marijuana during his senior year, and a little bit later discovered that he was using it to manage anxiety and an eating disorder. And as we said, we sought out professional help for that. Yes, we worried about our kid like most parents do, but we also knew that high school and this age of life was a time of growth and a time of learning. And we knew that Cal would figure things out. And we knew he was a capable kid, and we thought that his strengths would help to pull him through. We knew he was using marijuana, but we did not see signs of addiction. We will never know what led Cal to reach out to a drug dealer to get oxy. And what we've learned from looking back on our experience and also talking to many other families who have lost kids to fentanyl, when it comes to fentanyl deaths, the signs of a problem can be subtle and may not exist at all. Next. I invite you to take a few moments to look at the pictures of the kids on this page and see if there's any kid here that reminds you of somebody in your life. All of the kids and young adults on this page have died from fentanyl poisoning, most within the last 12 months. In the last 4 months, John and I have met at least 24 families who have lost kids to fentanyl, and this is just a subset of a much, much larger group of people who are facing loss of kids due to fentanyl poisoning. The numbers are growing dramatically, and this is affecting families in your community. The kids who are dying don't match the old stereotypes that you might have in your head from overdoses. You've got straight A students, athletes, musicians, boys, girls, and in the case of Alexander, kids as young as 14 years of age. You may be thinking, some people in the audience might be thinking that their kid may never try a fentanyl, and I ask you to challenge your thinking. Today's teens have grown up in a pill-popping culture. Kids are regularly prescribed Adderall, Xanax, even Percocet, an opioid, whenever they have their teeth removed, wisdom teeth removed. Kids in today's generation are more comfortable with prescription pills than any previous generation. Drugs are no longer sold in a dark alley somewhere. Instead, the dark alley is now the social media apps that are in our kids' phones, in their pockets. Often, drugs are delivered right to your front door. Add stress, add a pandemic, and you can see how easy it would be for a young adult to think that reaching for a cheap prescription pill that they can get online might help them and provide some relief. The results are tragic. Kids are dying in their bedrooms. Kids are dying under their parents' roofs. These kids made a poor choice, but they did not deserve to die. Next. The kids and young adults that you just saw are members of a new emerging category of victims of the opioid epidemic that we've never seen before. And I want to talk a little bit about actually, I want to go back. The introduction of fentanyl makes it necessary for us to change the way we think and talk about drugs. I'm going to start by talking about the traditional way that we've talked about drug use. Typically, kids might experiment with drugs in high school, perhaps middle school. They may go to their parents' refrigerator and pull a White Claw and see what it's like to drink a White Claw, or go into a medicine cabinet and take a pill and experiment on their own or at home. From there, perhaps you have kids going to a party with some friends, and there might be some pot there, and they may try some pot, or they may go to a park where somebody has brought a six-pack, and so they're perhaps trying it in a recreational setting with some friends. If they're not careful, they may develop a habit, and that habit could have a negative impact on their life, affecting their relationships with their families, affecting their school, work, whatever. And if that is left unchecked, it could become a physical addiction. And this is the stereotype of what an opioid overdose would be. Somebody who has an addiction and has progressed over some time to get to that point. I want to take a second to note here that we have empathy for people suffering from addiction. Many of them will lose their lives due to the introduction of fentanyl, and it's tragic. Addiction is a horrible disease. No one chooses to be addicted, and they deserve compassion as well. Next. With this old model, there are opportunities for family members, loved ones to step in when they see someone having a problem, or perhaps the person themselves notices that there's a problem and is able to pull themselves out of it or ask for help. Next. The introduction of fentanyl changes everything. One pill can kill. There is no chance for a family or friends to step in when they see that someone is on the wrong path. There's no chance for someone to learn from their mistakes or see that they're having a problem. This is why we need to change the current way of thinking. Next.
Hi, I'm Jon Epstein. I'm Cal's dad. Thank you, Jennifer. That was well done, and thank you for taking the lead on this. I also want to say thank you to everybody who came tonight, especially the students that are here listening. You are the most important people here, and you are the people we are working to protect. We're doing this tonight to honor Cal, as Jennifer mentioned, also to honor our son Miles, and to honor our community and protect our community. Because what we found out after Cal died from taking a fentanyl is really, really scary. And I never, ever would have wanted to be here sharing what we learned with you, but we're going to share it now in order to protect you. Now, we are not experts. We've learned way more than than of course we wanted to and we thought possible. There's others on the line who might correct me. I might make some mistakes here, but I'm going to share with you what I learned. And I also want to reemphasize what Jennifer said, that we have great empathy for those suffering with addiction. It's a horrible thing. The focus of our conversation is not on addiction, but fentanyls affect that population even more than those who are not suffering with addiction. So we started with what even is fentanyl? And here's the thing. I'm going to tell you all the mechanics about how this came to be. Everything on this page is legal. Fentanyl was developed for cancer treatment and post-surgery pain reduction. It's an opioid. It takes away the pain and it dramatically slows down your respiration. Fentanyl itself is 100 times more potent than morphine. Most opioids like a Vicodin or a Percocet or Oxy, morphine, these are made from many things, but the poppy plant. The poppy plant needs to be farmed and grown and cultivated. That takes time. There's a physical presence to grow poppy. A synthetic is something that's made only of chemicals. There's no poppy in it. Fentanyl is a synthetic, so it can be made fast and cheap and in a way that people can't find growing poppy fields. So fentanyl is an opioid. It's a synthetic that can be made in vast quantities, very fast and very cheap, and it's extremely powerful. The one way to think about this is when they administer a dose in the hospital, they administer it in micrograms. That's millionths of a gram. It is very addictive. People can become addicted on first use. And what you see down there next to the penny is the amount that would be lethal, which would be about 2 milligrams or 10 times what they're giving out in the hospital. So just those few grains can kill you. So you may ask, okay, well, this is all administered in the hospital under the care of doctors and nurses, and how is this becoming in fentanyls? Well, that's what the next slide will talk about. All right, so this is the only safe way to take a pharmaceutical pill. That is, it is made in a lab or a very high quality controlled factory. The doctor prescribes it to you in the correct dosage and in amount of time, and understands your physiology, and you purchase it at the pharmacy. You bring it home, you take it. That is the only safe way to take a pill. Next. What happened through the opioid epidemic is the opioids became so popular that there started to become a diversion of legit pills. These were trucks rerouted from the factory to the pharmacy, hijacked, or pills being taken out of medicine cabinets. These were legit pills being sold on the black market. And of course, that's illegal. It's dangerous because it wasn't prescribed to you, but these are still legit pills. What happened was the government, the law enforcement agencies, got very, very good at shutting down this supply of legit pills into the black market. They did a good job at that. So the supply got shut down, and if you know anything about economics, a couple things happen when that happens. And the next page, or the next graphic that comes up, is going to show you what I think is the most important thing to understand tonight about how your kids could get into fentanyls. What happened is, around the globe, a whole lot of it in China, illicitly manufactured fentanyl is being made in secret places, not in poppy fields because it's all synthetic. So it's inside closed places. Tons of it is being made very fast, very cheap, and with very low quality control. So those 2 micrograms, you can't even count on the original fentanyl that's making it into the pills being the right amount or being high quality. It goes to the drug trafficking organizations, many in Mexico, comes into the United States, where it's pressed into pills in garages with tools that can be bought, I'm not kidding, on Amazon. And that is how a fentanyl is made. There is no lacing of an OxyContin. There's no actual OxyContin in a fentanyl. It's all fentanyl. And the reason is it is so much cheaper to make a fentanyl than it is to get an actual legit OxyContin and add something to it. And nobody would do that anyway, right? So everything is a fentanyl. Those M30s there, which is what Cal took. And by the way, if you ever see an M30, report it and don't take it immediately, because there is not a blue M30 pill on the street that is legit. Just want you to know that. These low quality pills now, right? Low quality from fentanyl, low quality from the pressing in the garages, ends up in the black market. And now the black market is supercharged with social media. Social media is great for lots of things. It's great for distributing drugs. It's as easy as ordering a pizza. One of the families we talked with, their child went out and said, I'm going to walk the dog. They went to the corner up the street. They met their fentanyl dealer that they met on Snapchat, which is where Cal got his pill, and they brought it home and they died in their bed. So now the black market is completely contaminated. There's a lot of red dots in that box, but frankly, there probably should be more. You should count on any pill that comes out of the black market being a fentanyl, and quite possibly deadly. Next. So simple graphic. 5 years ago, maybe a whole portion of the pills in the market were legit pills, and a small percentage of them were fentanyl. Since the legit pill distribution channel was shut down, they're now all fentanyls. They're not real pills laced with something. They're poisonous. They're deadly. They're low quality. They have inconsistent amounts of deadly fentanyl. And you're getting ripped off as well as taking a risk of dying. A recent batch of maybe 50,000 pills was captured by the police, maybe in Louisiana. I believe that the average dosage in there was just under 2 milligrams, which is a lethal dose, and 10 times more what you get in the hospital. So that's 2 milligrams of fentanyl in each of the pills on average. Many of them went up to 5 milligrams, And on average, there were between 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 3 pills that had a deadly dose. So think about Russian roulette, 1 bullet with 6 chambers. This is 2 bullets with 6 chambers. So you wouldn't play Russian roulette to begin with. Do not buy a pill from the black market. They're all fake, and they're a very good chance that it's deadly. Next. Okay, so this is my last page before I hand it over to the next speaker. I just want you to know, just for those people who like data, I do, at least until I started looking at this, this problem is here and it is getting worse. If you look at the orange line going straight up and the next highest blue line, which has had a big rise over 20 years, but it's basically flat. The blue line are the prescription opioid deaths, so from legit pharmaceuticals. The orange line is from fentanyl. Look at the angle of that line. It's practically straight up. The CDC press release on the right-hand side says that during COVID, this actually got worse. This accelerated. So that orange line is now actually steeper. And as you know, it is here in our community. It's a little bit hard to say, but there's something about this press release that really jumped out at me when I was reading it later, and that is the date. Thursday, December 17th, 2020. This is the day before Charlie Turnan's birthday. Charlie is the boy whose Song for Charlie that Jennifer mentioned. That's his birthday. This is also the day we were standing in the hospital around Callie's bed saying our goodbyes. This notice was too late for us. We want the information you received tonight to be early enough for you. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Andy from Washington County Health Department.
And before Andy, you start, I just want to thank you both again. We'll be hearing more from the Epsteins at the end of our program tonight. I also want to mention, if you have questions, you can start to put those in the comment section on Facebook or YouTube. We'll be taking those questions at the end of our presentation. So I would like to bring in Andy Cartmill from Washington County Addiction Services to give us some more specifics about this drug. Andy?
Well, thank you very much. And again, a big thank you to the Epsteins for being willing to share their story and their heartache for the good of others. It's really very much appreciated, especially those of us that are parents. Difficult to imagine what it is you've gone through. So thank you very much. My name is Andy Cartmill, and I'm an educator with Washington County Addiction Services. And normally I talk for a couple hours about this stuff. So I'm going to take what I talk about and put it down into about 10 minutes. And I just want to reiterate a couple of things that have already been said. Fentanyl is a synthetic. It is very powerful, up to 100 times more so than morphine. It is prescribed for pain, and it is made illegally and distributed as a street drug. And there's a very high risk for addiction, and there's a very high risk for overdose. So when people think they are getting pills such as opioids, ecstasy, Xanax, and other benzodiazepines, oftentimes what they're getting is some fentanyl. And this is very dangerous because people are often unaware of this. It takes very little, as John was saying, it takes very little fentanyl to produce a high, and that makes it cheaper. And so the amount of fentanyl, even within a particular batch in each pill, can be different. It just 2 milligrams, as John mentioned, you guys, that's the weight of a mosquito, is enough to kill somebody. So law enforcement's going to talk to you about this. Emergency rooms have been seeing a tremendous increase in this. So that's why we want to talk about it. What I do is I talk to people about addiction with the whole thing. I don't want the process to start. And the bottom line here is I talk a lot about addiction, but and I don't want that to start ever. I don't want that process to start. But the real reality is, we are a drug-using people. And if you ever wondered if that's true, watch TV for a couple hours. How many drug commercials do you see? We use drugs in this country from birth to death. And don't get me wrong, drugs have done wonders for us. They kill things that kill us. But we are a drug-using people. My messaging has never been don't do drugs, because people never listen to that. These powerful drugs, a single use, a one-time use, could result in overdose and death. Even though I talk a lot about addiction and the development of substance use disorders, drugs like this could take one time. One doesn't have to be an addict to experience these devastating consequences. So again, people should assume that any pill sold on the street contains fentanyl. Make the assumption. So oftentimes I am asked, how do I know if something's wrong? What do I look for? What do I do? Easy question to ask, difficult question to answer. I'm going to tell you to trust your instincts. If you notice a change, ask about it. Oftentimes parents, we know our children better than most. And we also remember what it's like to be an adolescent. Do you ever remember making decisions based on emotion, impulsivity? Did you ever remember as an adolescent thinking 6 years ahead of time, 6 weeks ahead of time? It's the here and it's the now, oftentimes. That beautiful, gorgeous brain that takes about 25 years to mature, doing so from back to front, means that impulsivity and emotion are dictating some of this decision-making process. The last part to develop, that's the first part to be affected when we ingest a chemical. Normal adolescence, we're hormonal. We do weird things, right? Sometimes we're difficult, we're obnoxious, and things like that. There's a difference between that and drug use, but it's difficult to tell sometimes. So what I want to tell people is when there is an issue, oftentimes, especially if they've gone down that road of developing a use disorder, what used to matter to that person doesn't anymore. I imagine a lot of us have people in our lives with substance abuse issues. Where does logic play a role here? It really doesn't. We try to apply logic to illogical situations. Despite the problems that this use causes, they still do it. So if we want to look for particular signs and symptoms, trust your instincts. There are things like irregular eating or sleeping patterns, low energy, slipping grades, unusual irritability, general signs of depression, anxiety, even drastic changes in clothing style. Trust your instincts. If you notice a change, ask about it. So if these things are done, does it always mean there's a drug issue? No. It's very difficult oftentimes to detect a problem. And as parents, we've talked to our kids and we've noticed changes and we did what we're supposed to do. And we ask about them only to be assured, really, there's not an issue. So my thing isn't don't do drugs. My thing is why? Why are people doing this? When I talk to youth, and I'm telling you, I talk to thousands of youth, I think our kids get a bad rap a lot of times. Our youth make good decisions a lot more than they don't. Our youth do the right thing a lot more than they don't. Oftentimes they know the dangers of drug use. So why use? Again, where's the logic? No one starts, as it was mentioned, no one starts to develop a use disorder to become an addict. Oftentimes people want to feel different. They want to feel better. And when we look for reasons why people start, any reason you can think of, you're right. You're right. Every single one of us has taken a different path in this life. Your path, every individual's path, is why we look at things the way we do, how we view things the way we view them, our perspective, our perception. But they're different. We're all different. Trauma to one person may not be traumatic to another person. We talk about stress and anxiety. How many times have parents, and this is rhetorical, of course, have we told our kids, hey, we've been through what you've been through. We had drugs when we were kids. We had peer pressure. We had bullying. It's true. But it's not easy to be a youth today. Think about the things that they have to deal with that we never did. Social media is a good example. Everything that's posted, commented on, liked, is judged. I couldn't stand that when I was growing up. I would have hated that. But our youth deal with it all the time. When I ask high school counselors, what's the number one reason youth are coming to see you? By far, the number one answer they give me, and this is anecdotal, is anxiety. What do you think the anxiety is about? By far, the number one answer they give me has to do with social media. If you remember back in our day, right, if someone was bullied, for example, at the end of the day, you had a reprieve. You can go home. Now, it's 24/7. Our youth are dealing with things that a lot of us never had to deal with, certainly not to this degree. Stress and anxiety are part of all our lives, some more than others. Then there's COVID. COVID has made everything like times 10. There's a difference between isolation and forced isolation. People aren't working from home. You're at home during a crisis trying to work. They're not going to school from home. You're at school during a crisis you're at home during a crisis trying to go to school. We talk about mental health issues. Did you know that 50% of individuals with a lifetime mental illness are symptomatic by the time they're 14 years old? 75% by the time you're 24. Yet maybe 40% of those people ever seek treatment for any of those symptoms. Under the best of circumstances, being 14 is not easy. Initially, when somebody starts using, there's a want. I want to feel different. I want to feel better. But it's very personal. But unfortunately, that want can become a need. Till eventually, I don't use to get high, I use to function. I use to get through my day. I use to cope. Anxiety, depression, fear, especially during this time of COVID. A lot of us are going through this stuff. How are we coping? If I need to ingest a chemical to cope, maybe that's an issue. So it's a big problem, right? How do I talk to my kids about this? Well, when we talk about the science of prevention, we talk a lot about perception of harm. If I think a substance is not harmful, I am more likely to give it a shot. Doesn't mean I will, but I am more likely. If my perception is that most of my classmates are doing this, perhaps I am more likely to give it a shot because I don't want to be perceived as being different. Perception of harm is a big deal. And when we're talking about OxyContin, Vicodin, Percocet, prescribed medicines that have a very real function in our lives, oftentimes they're not perceived as harmful. Another thing we talk about is the perception of parental approval. You know, the number one reason our youth say they don't use? Parents. If I believe my parents don't have a problem with some sort of like alcohol use or things like that, doesn't mean I'm going to use it, but I'm more likely to. We talk about access. Well, one of the things that John mentioned, back in the 1999, 2000, when we started with really when doctors would treat to the pain, remember being asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your pain? And then opioids were distributed, and I totally get it, to ease that pain. And then it's just kind of gone up from there. So it used to be you can get your Percocet from getting a crown put on or having wisdom teeth pulled. They may give you 30 pills. You might use 1 or 2, and there's 28 sitting in the medicine cabinet. So one of the things we did from an educational standpoint was to tell people to lock their drugs up and take them to drug take-back events. It became a little bit harder to get at home because that was the number one place our youth were getting these pills. The prescribed pills was at home. Second, at a friend's house. Third, at a relative's house, like grandma and grandpa. So it became easier to get it on the street. Talk to your kids. Have a dialogue. We need to listen as well as we need to talk. Do you have any idea how much your kids know? The knowledge they have? Seriously? It's amazing. kids are really quite cool. And as I said, they get a bad reputation a lot of times. To me, that's not deserved. Don't be afraid to use teaching moments when you're watching TV. Because how many times are we watching TV and there's some sort of a drug reference on there? Good time to open a conversation. I know what my son liked to listen to a lot of hip hop, and there was lots of opportunity for me to have conversations about the stuff that was in some of that music. And if he couldn't answer my question, he didn't listen to it. I wouldn't let him. And just like the Epstein said, have expectations about substance use. Let your children know what those expectations are, and let there be consequences if those expectations are not met. I wish I can drop these pearls of wisdom on you to say, do this and everything will be good. But the reality is we are a drug-using people. If we start these conversations early and often, I am telling you that our youth make good decisions more than they don't. And folks like the Epsteins that have been through what they've gone through, I don't want that to happen to anybody else. Everybody that's going to talk to you here today is the same thing. They're telling you their story so other people don't go through this. So that is, I believe that's my time. So I'm going to stop, but I really thank you for the opportunity, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Andy. And I just want to let everyone know we are going to get to your questions. Please continue to put them in the chat on YouTube and Facebook, and we'll get to those shortly. I want to turn now to Sergeant Danny DiPietro. He's with the Washington County Sheriff's Department. And Sergeant, when we talk about access, I mean, all it really takes is someone to have a Snapchat account, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I'll get into that. And the numbers I'm going to specifically speak about are our West Side Interagency Narcotic Team, or WIN for short. It's an interagency team between our office, Hillsborough Police Department, Beaverton Police, and the FBI, as well as the National Guard counter-drug program. Primarily, the WIN team is, they do mid to upper level drug investigations, but unfortunately this year they've been inundated with drug overdose cases. So far this year, we've had 14 drug overdose cases investigated by the WIN team, 10 of which have been suspected prescription pill or fake prescription pills containing fentanyl. In the same time in 2020, there was 3, and 2019 in the same time frame, there was only 1. Of these overdose cases that we have seen today, this year, almost 40% of them have been individuals 25 years or younger. 5 are 25 to 18, and 1 of them was under 18 years of age. We talked earlier, the Epsteins talked earlier about the amount of pills that are being seized. So far this year, our office has already seized over 26,000 fake or fraudulent pills. Last year in the same time frame, we seized just under 8,000 this time. Total for last year was about 14,000. The year before, we seized 502 in the same time frame. I was speaking to one of our supervisors on the WIN team, and they told me of those 26,000 pills that they seized this year, almost every single one of them has been fraudulent, just like Mr. Epstein said. Between now, where almost all are fraudulent, 5 years ago, majority of them were the actual prescription pill that we were seizing. Fentanyl is cheap. It's easy to access. It's much more profitable to sell the fake pills. So that's where they're going with it. When it comes to our younger victims, the biggest thing we're trying to let them know is this isn't a stereotypical drug dealer where you're going to get these pills from. It's not the person you picture on the corner that's selling you a bag of whatever kind of drug it is. Most of the times in these cases, especially with the younger individuals, it's going to be a friend or a friend of a friend, someone they trust. Also, they think they're getting the same prescription pill that they may have taken, whether it was for an injury, playing sports, or accidentally breaking an arm, something that maybe mom and dad gave them. So they think it's okay. What they don't understand is the pill that they are most likely taking because they got it through a friend or got it off social media, whichever app or platform it is, they're getting a fake pill. The pills that we are mostly seeing are the M30 oxycodones that are fraudulent, but we're also seeing the Xanax and several other types of pills, whatever it may be. It is not the real, actual, legitimate pill that we were seeing, like I said earlier. But no matter what it is, whether it's a fake opioid pill or even a fake stimulant pill, like Ritalin, we are still seeing with fentanyl in them. So that's what we're trying to let families and the kids know, that whatever you see, more likely than not now, it is going to be a fake pill that you buy. So understand that you're gambling every time you take one of those pills. A 1 grain of fentanyl is the difference between a high that you're looking for and a possible overdose. Unfortunately, we've seen it too often where individuals have taken 1 pill and it has been the difference between life and death. So what we are trying to tell to everybody, if you do not get these pills prescribed to you from a physician, or you do not get them from a licensed pharmacist, assume that they are fake and they have a lethal dose of fentanyl in them.
Thank you, Danny. We want to mention that if you see drugs advertised on social media, you can report that anonymously at safeoregon.com. And we're going to repeat that again, but you don't have to give your identity. They just want to know what you're seeing online. Now, in addition to our presenters, we're also joined by Sergeant Kevin McDonald with the Beaverton Police Department. I want to invite him to come on. And Rick Puente, he is with the BSD's Public Safety. Rick actually helped lead a fentanyl training for our school principals today. So thank you, Rick, for joining us. And Leslie Rogers is with the BSD's Behavioral Health and Wellness team. Leslie has been working with teachers to develop health curriculum on this topic, and that's going to be rolled out in our health classes over the next month. So we are going to turn to some questions here, and I'm going to play off a little bit of what I was just talking about with safeoregon.com. And Danny, either you or Kevin, this question says, my adult son told me he has had people try to sell him drugs on Snapchat. If we see this, should we screenshot it and contact law enforcement? Kevin, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yes. The short answer is yes. Screenshot that and contact your local law enforcement so that we can follow up with that. But that is the short answer on that.
Okay. The short answer means we get more questions, so that's all good. Leslie, we have a question here. It says, any good ideas of how to better ways to connect young people to mental health resources? We hear parents really are struggling to get kids to a therapist. And I have to say, I've heard this especially when the kids are older, say 17 and now an adult 18. It's kind of this middle area where it's hard to find a care provider.
Thank you for asking that. And it's actually worse. It's actually worse in times of COVID, even though access has expanded because most providers are doing telehealth. I will say that we do have social workers that are assigned to every single school in BSD. And that is their area of specialty, is knowing what providers are available, what insurance they take, what their areas of specialization are, and then really hand-holding parents to eliminate any barriers to accessing those treatments. So if we have a parent that is looking for treatment for their child, I would recommend asking their school counselor, the school counselor assigned to their child, and then asking for a referral to their building social worker.
And can you talk a little bit about privacy? Because I'm guessing that there might be some hesitation from a parent to reach out to a school official or a school counselor and ask for that kind of help.
I have two responses to that. The first one I think is that, you know, we want to normalize seeking mental health treatment as much as we can. We know that people are struggling. We know that people were struggling before COVID, and we know that so many more people are struggling now. So, you know, we really want to normalize just the seeking of treatment, and then to talk openly about mental health to reduce that stigma. Now, in terms of reaching out to the counselor, that wouldn't be public information. There's nothing that would go in a child's permanent cumulative folder about seeking out that treatment. And then their relationship with the social worker would be confidential, with the exception of any mandatory reporting requirements.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. This question was addressed to Jon and Jennifer. And it may also have a law enforcement element. So it says, hello, my name is Evander, and he's an 8th grader at BSD. First of all, I want to congratulate you for being on this call and watching this, Evander. I am so proud of you. My question for Jon and Jennifer is, did they look into fentanyl processing on the dark web? because I have heard that this is a high processing location for that drug. If you did, what did you find?
Evander, thanks for being here and asking the question. Absolutely agree with Shelley on that. Just before I answer that, one thing I wanted to say, Shelley, was Snapchat is off to the first question that was asked. Besides screenshotting and giving to local law enforcement, Snapchat has a way to report as well. So you can do that, and I believe that's anonymous, and that's a good thing to do. You know, Evander, I would have to say I'm not sure I really understand the dark web. So I think we did not dig into that for our situation. Cal got it on Snapchat. Most of the stuff we've been talking about and learning about was Snapchat. But, you know, I think there are a lot of corners of the internet where probably lots of stuff happens. And maybe one of the law enforcement officers could talk about that a little bit.
Danny, Kevin, you want to chime in?
So yeah, the dark web, and don't quote me on these numbers, but I want to say the internet that we use is about 2%, and then 98% is the dark web, or roughly around those numbers. So it's a vast area, and to police that, it's kind of going down, I guess, the rabbit hole of different directions globally, right? Because IP addresses are bounced around the world. And so it's super complex to really track down a source, especially on the dark web.
And I'll add a little to that. I spoke to the supervisor at our WIN team, and he told us that a lot of this fentanyl is coming through the mail, whether it is ordered most of the time on the dark web. Due to the fact that it takes such little fentanyl in order to make one pill, it doesn't take a large package to ship it. So taking it one step further, when individuals are making these pills, about 50% we're seeing are manufactured outside of the US or outside of our borders. And the other 50%, they're having the fentanyl shipped to them off the dark web is what we're seeing. And they're actually stamping or making the pills right here in our backyards.
Thank you. Andy, here's a question for you. Does Narcan work for fentanyl? We haven't talked much about this, but you want to give us a really quick primer? Oh, you're muted.
And that's all I have to say about that. There's a drug that reverses the effects of opioid overdose called Narcan or naloxone. And I believe it does. Yes, it does work with fentanyl because it is an opioid. The naloxone is available at your pharmacies, and you should be able to get that. And we highly recommend that if someone is a substance user, to have that on hand. So yes, the answer is yes, it does work.
And while we're not encouraging, obviously, anyone to be a substance user, Kevin, I think I heard mentioned in the staff training today that our SROs are carrying that just in case?
That is correct. So at least for Beaverton Police, and I'll let Danny speak for the Sheriff's Office, but with Beaverton Police, there is naloxone in all the patrol officers' cars, but also the school resource officers carry that as well. And we're actually looking at having additional doses of that in the event that we need it. And I think it's probably the same for the Sheriff's Office.
Yeah, it definitely is the same for the Sheriff's Office, and it seems to be utilized more and more. I hear of cases almost every night that we are utilizing naloxone. The one thing I will tell you, and from the training that we've had, if you do get naloxone, you cannot get too much of it. Keep administering it and hoping that it works. But unfortunately, 2 of our last overdose cases that we've seen, naloxone was not useful, and it ended up not working. So although it is a very useful tool and we recommend everyone to have it, don't think that it's the be all end all save all.
So again, this is not a safe way for you to be taking fentanyl pills.
Yeah. And actually,
Absolutely.
if I can add to that, because I think we've learned quite a bit on this as well. Because of the potency, because it is so strong, with fentanyl overdoses, what we have heard is that there are times when first responders come and they simply don't have enough naloxone. It is multiple doses, and they may run out of doses to be able to help someone. And the other issue is that These kids are often taking these pills at home secretively. There's nobody that sees them overdose, and their parents are finding them the next morning. So there's no chance to even use the naloxone. So, if kids are partying and there's an overdose, perhaps that might save them. But this new victim that we're seeing, there's no chance.
Well, I want to add to that, actually, because we've sadly come in contact with a number of families whose children were with others. They took the Fentanyl, they started experiencing symptoms, and their friends got scared and left them. Now, and they died. And what those kids on the line tonight should know is you are protected. You are not going to get into trouble if you call. It's called the Good Samaritan Law, I believe. Is that right, officers? You're not going to get into trouble. Plus, I think you'll probably be able to live with yourself a lot better if you help your friend rather than leave them to die. So don't worry about the short-term consequences of your parents finding out you had snuck out or were at a party. Worry about the long-term consequences of your friend's health and call for help. They need that Narcan quickly.
Yeah. And John, you reminded me of something. You and I and Jen have talked about something called pharma parties. I want parents to be aware of what a pharma party is. Can you explain that?
Yeah, it's awful. I guess the way it works is you go to the party, you bring whatever pills you were able to get your hands on from the medicine cabinet, from your Snapchat dealer, from your friend of a friend. You throw them in a bowl, and then everybody takes some. Take whatever you get. Apparently, that's a way to have fun these days. So not only should you not ever take a pill that you didn't get prescribed and from a pharmacy, the very last thing you should do is bring pills and take a pill out of a bowl with who knows what's in it. You could, you could bet you're going to run into trouble on that one.
Yeah, for sure. Leslie, here's a question. It says, thank you so much for sharing your story to the Epsteins. And it says, what is being done at the state level to add this information into our school curriculum?
Good question. I will answer that one to the best of my ability. So Division 22 actually says that that health classes have to include A&D, alcohol and drug education information. And through our work in the last several weeks with the Health TOSA to talk about creating fentanyl-related lessons for their health classes specifically, what I feel really confident in is that our drug education classes that go to health students will continue to evolve. Because what we know now, as this problem has become a crisis, that we have to just continually evolve our curriculum, and our health teachers are devoted and committed to doing that.
And I am correct that we've prepared a fentanyl lesson that's going to be rolled over the next month. Is that going to be middle school, high school, just high school?
Right now it is actually slated for Health 1 and Health 2, but then there's also a series of shorter advisory lessons that will be recommended to both middle and high schools as well. Yes.
And I think I might answer our next question. It says, will this curriculum be covered in the Beaver Lodge homeroom through our district? And I'm thinking Beaver Lodge's advisory.
That sounds like Beaverton High School, Beaver Lodge, Beaverton High School. I actually don't know the specifics of BHS's plan to roll it out. I know specifically that health teachers are planning to teach it. But I don't have information if it's going to roll out in Beaver Lodge outside of health.
Okay.
But I do know that the lessons are accessible within those advisory periods as well.
I'd like to comment that we're really grateful, and everybody who's listening to this should know that there is nothing out there. I mean, we're engaged with a group in California that, the Turn-ins, as I said, Song for Charlie. Charlie's death preceded Cal's by just a couple of months. And they've been meeting, they have a dozen or 24 families in California, and there is no curriculum out there. There's not presentations like this. We've gone to a couple school district meetings and they haven't looked like this with all of the players and experts, and there's not curriculum that's being developed nationally or in places, at least not that we've seen. So Beaverton has leaned into this with, all the way. And we're really grateful that you're preparing content that students will get their hands on before they go home for the summer with free time on their hands or off to college, or coming back into school next year where there's that much more interaction and maybe pill passing. So we're really grateful for that.
John, I'd like to comment on that. You're exactly right. There's not established curriculum out there, from our health teachers and reaching out to the county and all of us. We had to dig deep to find relevant materials. I just think that they haven't, our publishers and curriculum developers, the problem is so recent. The explosion of the problem is so recent. They just haven't caught up yet. So we're going to do our best to stay on top of it and make sure that kids get the information that they need.
And I also want to call out Cal's brother, Miles Epstein, who's been helping us reach students. And Miles recorded a video that's going to be shown to your kids in their health class. And he was really brave and really honest. And we appreciate him talking directly to our students. So thank you, Miles. This next one's for Andy. What is the behavior of someone who is under the effect of any of these prescription drugs or fentanyl?
Well, when we're talking about opioids, as we mentioned, it's a respiratory depressant. So clammy skin, shallow breathing, pinpoint pupils, things like that. But every individual reacts differently. It's not a one thing for everybody. But in general, yeah, it's a depressant, and this is why another really dangerous thing is to take some of these things with alcohol, for example, and with some of these other drugs, because that compounds that respiratory effect, and the oxygen that goes to the brain is reduced, and it can be catastrophic. So those are some of the signs and symptoms that people can look for.
And thank you. And Kevin, I was struck today in the training. It's not only dangerous to ingest. If you find these pills, let's talk to parents about what they should do.
Right. So because of the potency of the fentanyl, just simply touching them potentially could expose you to that drug. And so, under the premise that pretty much everything out there is not the real prescription drug, like an Oxy or a Xanax, even touching that to a small amount. And I think I saw a slide earlier where there was a penny and it had some drops of fentanyl. And those can be lethal, just simply touching that. If it's crushed, any small amount like that can go through your skin and be absorbed that way. And so it's a huge concern. So, for parents, if they suspect that they see those types of pills, certainly not handling them, or if they need to be handled in some manner, that you're using protective gear, gloves, that type of thing. And even the concern for respiratory inhalation, if it's in a dust powder, that could be potentially fatal to even a parent or a sibling or anyone in the household.
Thank you. Important. Danny, this question is for you. Have we caught many of the people who are making these illegal drugs available to our youth?
We have been able to catch up with some of them. Unfortunately, with these pill presses, they're very small. They're easy to move. If we do catch them, or we catch the person who's making them, what we're finding is the next person in line just steps in. So we are actively searching these individuals. Yes, we have caught them. Like I said, though, it's so easy to do. It's very profitable. So the next person in line steps up. So right now, we're inundated with these cases, and we're hoping to get a leg up on them, to say. But the biggest thing we're trying to do is just educate the community and what's going on, because this is new to most people. They don't know what fentanyl is. They think they're taking that actual legitimate prescription pill when they're not. So.
And either Leslie or Andy, this question says, what should I do if someone I know starts using drugs? I think this is actually coming from perhaps a student.
Andy, you want to take a stab at that one?
I'll take a stab at it. You know what? I'm all for honesty. So if you notice a friend of yours is taking a drug, it's such a good question. be honest with them and tell them you don't think they should be doing that. And then maybe ask them, why are they taking a drug, and get in the conversation about that. But this is also something you don't keep quiet about. Tell an adult, talk to somebody. And if your friend says, swear to me you're not going to say anything, don't make that promise. And if they're going to get mad, fine. I'd rather have you mad and okay than not. So that's my suggestion. What do you think, Leslie?
No, I think that's a good thing. I mean, depending on what we're talking about, I think talking about the risks are good. I mean, there's so much information out there, just the information that we're putting out right now. With the prevalence of pills, I think that if you have a friend that is taking pills, I think this is the conversation to be having with them. And then you can always talk to your school counselor or a trusted adult at school just to get some advice. And then, in terms of reporting it, you can always go to, you can always report it to Safe Oregon as well. And somebody will follow up. Typically those get relayed to the school. And then usually it's the counselor that will follow up with the student.
Leslie, talk a little bit more how that works. If I'm a student, I have a friend who is using, I call safeoregon.com. I give their name. I say what school they're at. I mean, that's gonna be tough for a student. It sounds kind of like ratting them out, doesn't it?
It is. I mean, the good news about Safe Oregon is that it's anonymous. I'm not going to promise that it's fail safe. I mean, there's, the principal is usually the first line of contact. People call Safe Oregon for suicide concerns, for reports of violence or threats. There's an anonymous option. And so it really depends on how much information that you can share. If you can screenshot, I think that that's very helpful, because we're talking about students using, but we're also talking about trying to make sure that we can pursue those that are selling the pills to the student, right? So if you have a concern about a friend and you report, hey, this is my friend, this is the school that they go to, and I am concerned that they're using drugs, the first call, it wouldn't be classified an urgent call, but they would reach out to the school the next day.
And not use your name. You can do it anonymous.
And that's it. It's completely anonymous, and it would just be like, we have a report from an anonymous person that a student in your school is engaging in this behavior.
Okay.
Kevin, do you know more about that? Can you speak more about that than I? Are there any other details you want to share about Safe Oregon that I might have missed?
Well, I think you covered it really. I mean, it does go through the school, and then it kind of gets vetted that way. Certainly, if it's more law enforcement related thing, then it'll go to us. Like, that's typically more of a threat situation or imminent situation.
Okay. This is either for Rick or Kevin. It says, what are the main channels that these drugs are being distributed? Is it Snapchat? Is it Instagram? Is there some other place? What should parents be looking for?
Yes.
Yes, and yes.
Yeah. I mean, it really is through their social media. I mean, that's kids are on their social media so much, and so that is correct. I mean, they're getting that information. I think we touched on it earlier, but something that happens at school is immediately known to a huge population, right? And so these social connections on the social media, that they can find a person to get them the oxy or whatever it is. They're able to do that, and so that is the medium. Certainly there's probably person-to-person contacts. People have friends and circles, and I'm sure that still exists. So Rick, do you have anything to add?
Not really. I mean, you covered it all. I think the only other dynamic now is that with COVID, we've been almost in a position to hand these technology devices to students across the district, to where maybe some didn't have technology to access that. Now they do. So, I mean, it's again, you'll see it through all avenues. And I know that Sergeant DiPietro and Sergeant McDonald and their staff have seen a lot, but I think that's another aspect of that is just technology that they use. So,
yeah. And John and Jen, I mean, I'm assuming that you'd advocate for people checking their kids' social accounts.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know if we're the best people to explain how to do it. But yes, you should be checking your kids' social media accounts. I know, to add to what's been said already, I know that many kids today, when they're on social media,
they are connecting with people, not just their friends group. You know, many of them are collecting, you know, their friends, or if somebody requests to be a friend with them, they're just saying yes without really knowing who they are. And that's part of the problem. And I, like I said, I'm still learning this. I'm trying to understand, but I know that what I'm hearing is that some of the victims were receiving ads via Snapchat or ads via, they were basically, the drug dealers were reaching out to the kids, and basically the drug dealers, they are targeting our kids on social media. So even if your kid isn't necessarily reaching out, think about advertising and how advertising works. You know, your kid sees a commercial the first time, they don't care about it, but when they see it again and again and again, they become more interested. And this is one of the problems with the way social media is working today. The drug dealers have figured out a way to reach out to the kids, and they're doing it again and again and again, and these kids are seeing it, and some of these kids who perhaps might not have reached out are becoming curious.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've heard of it maybe a little bit like grooming, like friend of a friend, and first it might just be hello, cool exchange of, you know, pleasantries, and over time the messaging becomes stronger about the things that they're offering until finally a bad choice is made.
Yeah.
And I've been told, and you know, ask your kid if they've seen drugs on social media. Ask them, go on with them and see if you can find how easily you can find pills on social media. It is very easy.
Yeah. Along those lines, Andy, Leslie, we have this question that's from a student. So bravo for asking this question. What do you suggest I say if someone asks me to buy or use drugs? Let's give kids some tools.
Whenever I'm asked that, you know, the research supports that if we practice saying no, it makes a difference. So I would say, first of all, use your voice, however you say it. So if someone asks you to use drugs, it could be as simple as, no, I don't do that. I don't want to do that. Don't ever ask me again. Parents will often tell you, go ahead and blame us. Man, if I do that, my parents will kill me. My coach won't let me do it. And if I get caught, I'm off the team. I'm not going to do that. But use your own voice. And I strongly suggest you practice it. Literally, say it to yourself in the mirror. Say it to friends. Practice on situations, on how you're asked and how you would say no. It makes a difference. Good question.
And I'm glad a student asked it. So
Absolutely.
thank you. Another one here, it says, do you have a visual example of how these pills are being marketed over social media? I don't have the ability to pull something up right now, but officers can you kind of describe, I mean, what these ads are? I'm calling them ads. I'm sure they're not quite that formal, but what are we talking about here?
Danny, you're going to jump on that one?
No, I was going to leave that one for you.
You know, I guess it can vary. I mean, it's Snapchat, so it's, you know, a photo of something like that of what it is. And I think in some of the illustrations, even this evening, we've seen the fake pills, but they're showing the product, right? They're advertising what they have. Certainly, it's images that are that go along with drug culture. And so those are some of the things we see, but I mean, it can vary. It really can.
And
The interesting thing that I've seen just over the years, the drug lingo seems to change. And so a sentence as simple as "I got" is translated to the youth in that group. Hey, I've got some stuff to sell, whether it's pills or whatever. So read into the messages if you're a parent, and look into them a little more. If it's not making sense to you, try to figure it out. And one tool that I have found to be the most useful is type it into a Google search. What does this mean? You're going to find a slang term for it. Yeah, you will find the slang term for it. And something as simple as "I got" maybe something that pops up and says, hey, this is the most, or the new slang for saying I'm holding, or I've got drugs on me, or I've got fake pills on me. So just kind of think outside the box. And if it doesn't make sense to you, something else is going on.
Jen, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, I did. As I said previously, these dealers are targeting young kids, and so when you do a search, the menus will be very colorful. They'll be bright. They're targeting kids, and so they're going to get the attention of youngsters, and they're not necessarily always. I mean, I'm sure there's ads that show pictures of the actual pills, but it just might be something colorful and bright and almost cartoonish. Something that would attract and feel less threatening, perhaps, to a young person who doesn't really know what they're doing.
Gotcha. These next two questions I might just take. It says, is this information getting out to other area school districts? So we mentioned that there's not a lot of information out there for school districts right now. We've developed our own over the last month, and we've made it available and are making it available to every school district in the state of Oregon through our different channels. And so we're hoping that people will take advantage of that, and they'll use the resources that we've already developed. But we're advocating for school districts to take this up. The next one says, how is the district going to educate students who are already had their high school health 1 and 2? It's a great question. I know, Leslie, you mentioned that we're working on pushing it out to advisory.
We're working on it. I don't have a lot of details about what that plan looks like yet, but I do know, and honestly, just some of the limitations with the 4x4 schedule too, that not all schools have synchronous advisories as well. So we're working on a plan to make sure that kids get the information.
Needless to say, this is not a one and done. This is not something that we're just going to focus on for the next month. We're committed to providing this education on fentanyl or whatever's next. So please be confident in the fact that if they don't hear it right now, it's a lesson that we're going to be keep hammering on. This next one says, Kevin, maybe this is for you. It says, is there a test strip to determine what exactly is in a pill that is purchased on the street? My kid seems to think there is. And Andy, maybe this is for you too. Like, it sounds like if they think there's a safe way to test this pill, they might think there's a safe way to take the pill.
I would not mess with it
Yeah,
at all. Consider, especially with fentanyl, if it does have fentanyl in it, it just even messing around with it could be fatal to the person doing that, the parent or whoever. So I would suggest not doing that. Andy?
I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Nothing to mess.
If a few grains is deadly, what else is in the fentanyl pills besides fentanyl? Is it just filler?
Binder.
Yep.
It's they'll use whatever they can to make sure that the pill will form together and make a solid product that when put into a pill press, it's going to look what a actual manufactured pharmaceutical pill is going to look at. But it could be anything from something just off the shelf at your regular grocery store or GNC that just binds that pill together. And the only thing in there that's actually got not a pharmaceutical, but a potency or a drug to it is the fentanyl itself.
Gotcha. This one, Danny, it says, is there a way I can report a drug dealer anonymously? I'm thinking that we can point people to Safe Oregon or other.
Absolutely.
ways? Okay.
And even at our local level, our West Side Interagency Narcotic Team, or WIN, they have an anonymous tip line that you can call. We see it all the time. We'll get tips and we follow up on those every day. So either way, you can call into non-emergency dispatch and say, I want to be anonymous. This is what's going on. It will be followed up on. So like you said, there's numerous ways, Safe Oregon, through our drug team, through non-emergency dispatch, whatever it is, feel free to take whatever avenue you want.
Just to follow up on that. So just picture if that's a 7th grader right now watching in his room, like, is there a phone number or an email, like something actually specific we can say right now where they can go?
I've got my colleague sitting next to me. He's going to dig up some numbers, but the non-emergency dispatch number is 503-629-0111. Again, 503-629-0111. And then we'll look up the tip line for our Westside Interagency Narcotic Team. And then, Shelley, by chance, do you have the Safe Oregon website that we can throw in the chat as well?
Yeah,
Or anyone else?
it's a pretty easy one to remember. It literally is safeoregon.com, safeoregon.com. And if you go there, it's very clear that it says, if you want to leave a tip, click here. So if you're looking for something easy to remember, I think that's pretty good one. This also is for our law enforcement officers. It says, would you mind sharing about the consequences or sentencing of a minor who is distributing?
I guess it could depend on the substance level. I think, when it comes to juveniles, we're really looking at keeping them out of the criminal justice system. But, I guess it depends on what it is and the severity of it. It's kind of a broad question. Possession of some substances because of Measure 110, possession of user amounts of certain drugs in Oregon is now just an e-violation. To give you an example, an e-violation in Oregon is less serious than not signaling a lane change. It's more serious to not use your signal for a lane change than it is to possess a user quantity of methamphetamine or cocaine or drugs like that. Fentanyl gets into this Schedule 1 category, so it's a little bit higher as far as severity. But we're primarily looking to find out why these kids have these drugs, and if they are distributing them, we need to find that source.
Gotcha.
I'll add a little. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add one thing to that, and that's, we understand that the individuals or the children who are using these, like Kevin said, we're not, trying to get them in trouble for the most part. We really want to help them. We understand that they're in that experimental phase where they're using it maybe recreationally or just trying to, figure something out, see if it's something they like. Our goal is to prevent them from becoming an addict. So getting them the help that they need is our primary goal.
And actually, someone asked here if you can become addicted to fentanyl. I guess that's if you don't die from your first pill or your second pill or your third pill. I mean, it seems pretty darn risky.
It's highly addictive.
Yeah.
Highly addictive.
Highly addictive.
Over the last 10 years when I was on patrol, I worked a lot of drug investigations, and of all the users that I spoke to, the number one most addictive drug is the opioids. And those individuals would get to the point where they're so addicted that coming off it was their biggest fear. Fentanyl falls in the exact same category. So it is extremely addictive.
Gotcha. This one says, in the world of drug normalization, I know John mentioned this in the video that we looked at, it says, what is the advice for parents to help kids against drug addiction problems with the facts that in 2020, Oregon Measure 110 legalized possession of heroin, cocaine, and meth? Andy, you want to take a stab at that?
Well, as a county employee, no. I'm not. Here's what I will say that I hope that more people seek treatment. I hope that that we develop better capacity to receive those people that are seeking treatment. And so I understand what the question is, but I come at it from somebody else might have a better take on this.
I don't know. I'll just jump in. I actually think that there's a lot of angles to the drug problem. And there's a lot of places you can put your energy, whether that's on the law and the supply side or the politics of it. And I just suggest everybody, if you're interested, dig in and figure out where to put your energy. I think the most important thing tonight is to know that this danger is out there and to protect your family and your kids and your friends. And I'm not sure it's super constructive to talk about the politics of the Oregon decision around drugs. I think we can all intuit that it makes the situation more complicated, and harder in some places. But, I think we should stay focused on how do we protect our kids right now and put energy into that political discussion in other places.
Yeah. And Leslie, would you agree that, bottom line, it's like talk to your kids early and often, early and often, early
Yes.
and often.
Yes. And stay on top of the trends, right? There's so many things that are happening so frequently that are so hard for us as parents to even as educators to stay on top of, like, which social media platforms, are our kids using, which, what are the apps that they're using? How are they communicating? Just really stay as informed about the trends as you can and talk to your kids frequently.
Great. John and Jennifer, I just want to share this one message with you before we wrap up tonight. I know that you have some closing thoughts. It says, watching Mesmerized with my 13 and 15-year-old, the entire house is paying attention. COVID, Snapchat, you guys are speaking my kids' language. Epstein's, thank you. You can feel the energy shift in the room with your story. I wholeheartedly believe you have saved lives tonight, possibly my own sons. I don't think they have used anything, but I'm 100% sure that they will be tempted at some point. Thank you from one parent to another from the bottom of my heart. Right. All right. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to John and Jennifer, and they just have a couple closing thoughts.
I'm supposed to talk after that. That was very heartfelt. Thank you for asking that question to the parent or family that asked that, and thanks for passing that on, Shelley. So Melissa, if you could just bring up the COPE slide. I just want to very briefly hit that, and then we'll hit our two closing slides. And you can just build it all the way out with the next click and one more. So I think Andy talked about this a lot, and he talked about sort of what you do to cope and how that can get into a negative cycle. And with fentanyl, you could end up dying. I just want to kind of mention that there are positive coping strategies, and you know what they are: listening to music, exercising, getting a good night's sleep, taking a break, talking to a friend, or asking for help, a professional or your parent. If you don't know those coping strategies, if you're a student on the line, you don't have good examples for those, ask your counselor at school or your teacher or your parent. But there are a number of coping strategies. Your stress is real. It's very real. And we all experience this in the world. Yours is perhaps more than everybody else's. So your stress is real, and how you deal with it is your choice. So I implore you to think about making good choices and not getting into a space where you're no longer in control of your choices, which is what happens when you get in the drug world. As Andy said, it's not logic anymore. Something else takes over and you're not making choices there. It's just you're in it. So make good choices in coping with your stress. So that'll lead us to our last two pages. So next.
So I'm going to try to be quick. We've covered a lot today, and I know everyone's probably ready to wrap up. And I just want to summarize some of the key points that we made. As we've said again and again, our youth are being targeted on social media by drug dealers. Everyone needs to know that. And with phones in their pockets and fentanyl on the street, anyone can be a victim. There's no this affects everybody. The traditional signs of addiction no longer apply. People are dying when they're experimenting. People are dying before they have a chance to get addicted. So everyone needs to know that. The increase in strength of synthetic opioids and the low quality, as John mentioned, means that there's no room for error. One pill can kill. This was touched upon just slightly, but I do want to mention that marijuana is also not the same as it was in the 70s. In the 70s, the THC level in marijuanas was maybe a few percent. Now, kids are getting vaping pods that can have up to 80% or even more of THC in it. And the effects of that THC on young brains is not fully understood. And so people need to understand that we need to keep an eye on that as well. In terms of teen mental health, if you think your kid is struggling, talk to them, reach out, keep checking, keep talking to them. Get help if you need it, and trust your instincts. There's a good chance, now that you've heard this, there's a good chance that you You may have more information than a lot of the experts out there, of doctors, counselors, etc. Everybody's learning about this right now. So it's don't assume that the professionals have all the information. If they don't seem to be informed, keep asking them questions, share this. Everybody needs to know this, and everybody needs to learn about this. Talk to others and find support, friends, families, teachers, counselors. We need to break down the stigmas about mental health and drug use and talk, and we all need to learn together. And I think it was Leslie, we touched upon this already, but mental health care is hard. Whenever you do need mental care, mental health, finding a provider can be hard. It can take time to get on somebody's schedule. Once you do find someone, the first person you meet may not be a good fit. Recognize that ahead of time, and just be persistent. Don't give up, because it's very important to get the mental health help if you need it. Next.
Okay, so taking action, to the takeaways, something to leave with. I can hear Mrs. Taylor in my ear from Bonnie Slope talking about big action and little action. There's something out there that everybody can do, for sure. And I really would like everybody to leave doing something, or in the case of number one, not doing something. Biggest message you could leave with: don't trust any pill unless you bought it from a pharmacy and you opened the bottle and you took the pill out. Just don't do it. There's a pretty good chance you're getting Fentanyl, and there's a pretty good chance that Fentanyl will be deadly. Can't stress that enough. Second, you're here tonight. Thank you. Learning. Continue to educate yourself and educate others. If every single person who watched that YouTube video, which is over 30,000 views or something, shared this information with 5 people, in just one more iteration of that, there'd be 1 million people who knew about this. And that would be a lot more people than know about it today. There'd be nothing better than come and Sergeant DiPietro present a graph that showed that the 14 deaths we've had this year have gone, didn't go any higher. It would be great. We have the power to stop that from happening. We really do. So I ask you to share this information with others. As Shelley mentioned, Beaverton's making their information available to other school districts. So tell a friend, tell a neighbor. Third, see something, say something. We talked about that a lot. safeoregon.com. Be a hero, or be an anonymous hero. An opportunity to do that, and hit the button on Snapchat and report someone you see selling. Lastly, your stress is real. We totally recognize that, and we are here to help you find ways to cope in a healthy way. And if you can't, or you find yourself not able to, please, please, please ask for help. The bottom line of this page is, our law enforcement officers, yes, they have an opportunity to really make a difference and save us in the long term. Our teachers and educators, they do a lot for us, but there's really nobody who's going to protect you more than you. So your job is to protect yourself and to protect your friends and your family. This is really a new thing. It is dangerous. The controls out there do not exist, and the responsibility has to fall on you. So we're really asking you to take that away from here tonight. Next. So that's it. Thank you for listening to our story of our beautiful son, Cal. We do feel like we're honoring him, and we do feel like he would have been so upset and angry if I could see him, if one of his friends were lost in this way, and he would do everything in his power to protect them. So I want to thank the students who came tonight. For sure. Number one, thank you for being here. You are our job. And the parents that are here as well. Of course, our panel tonight, all of them, we appreciate that. Beaverton School District, like I said, you are a leader. You've leaned in. You listened when Jennifer called. You pulled this together. You're following through. Thank you so much. Washington County Sheriff's Office, from Sergeant Schroeder, who hugged me here on the street that fateful day, to our detective that is working the case. Thank you so much. Beaverton Police is here as well. Thank you so much. Special call out, Song for Charlie, Ed and Mary Turnen in Sacramento, and the families that they've brought together with us that are, we're standing on their shoulders with what we've learned about this. And so we really thank them so much. And lastly, I mean, our friends in our community and of course our family, thank you for being here and supporting us, and especially the cousins. Jennifer told me not to name them all because there's so many, but the cousins were especially close and they've been hit especially hard by the loss of Cal. So to all the cousins out there, thank you so much. That's our email. If for some reason you would like to ask us a question or need help, please feel free to contact us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jon and Jennifer, thank you for being so incredibly generous. And I want to thank all of our participants tonight. Your words here tonight will hopefully save lives, and we're counting